the light bulb moment came on and I realized, oh my gosh, this 10 years working in sales, we've got it all wrong. It's not about sales, it's all about the buyers. The buyers are your best innovators and creators. I remember meeting this gorgeous black woman who was a CEO of a company, and it blew my mind because I have never seen a black woman CEO running a company looking amazing. Never seen that in my entire life. We're all here for a reason. And if I could encourage anybody and everybody to go out and do what you're here to do, because no one else, whether it's your parents, whether it's your teachers, they're talking from their experience. How dare they think that they can tell you who you are and what you can do?
My guest for this episode is Janice B. Gordon. Janice is a customer growth expert and an absolute rock star speaker, educator and consultant. She started out as a sales rep, rising through the ranks and learning her craft until she eventually became a visiting fellow at Cranfield School of Management. She now helps CEOs and sales leaders expand key customers, create productive sales teams, and implement proven customer-centric revenue growth strategies. She's been recognised by LinkedIn Sales as one of the 15 innovating sales influencers to follow, and she's the host of the Top 10 Sales podcast, Scale Your Sales. I first met Janice several years ago on the speaking circuit, and I love her energy and her passion for her topic, so I'm excited to have her on the show to share her story and her experience. If you enjoy what you hear, please leave a review, like, comment and subscribe. It would mean the world to me and will help this podcast reach as many people as possible. You don't want to miss this. Enjoy. Janice, welcome to the show. My first question for you, in life, what's the most important thing that you've ever had to pitch for?
Most important thing I've ever had to pitch for. Do you know what? When I was doing a art foundation course, I wanted to get into Brighton University. It was one of the top universities for business and design. And I remember the foundation, they had their favourites. And I've never been anyone's favourite.
Oh, I'm sure you're my favourite. You're my favourite.
But, you know, in that kind of, you know, I have to say, this is in the background of, there was a lot of racism in education.
Yeah.
Prior to that, literally all of my family, my elder sister and brother were put in remedial classes. We weren't remedial. We were just the only black family in this village. You know, we're actually more qualified than probably a lot of the teachers now and everything like that. So, you know, kind of going through in the 1970s and 80s, education was, I mean, it's brutal now, but it was more so then. So you're always written off in other people's minds. So there I am on a foundation course and wanted to get into one of the top schools that everyone was going for. And I think that was probably one of the more important pitches that I did that set me on a path, because the person that was the top student didn't get in and I did. And then the characters, and very much characters that I met through that course. And then I went to work in America. So that kind of set me on a path. I think that was probably I can't remember what I said. I can't remember what I did, but I obviously did something right. And it was interesting on the course, there was really, they selected unusual types.
Yeah.
It wasn't the typical type that was on this course. So everyone had a background. People came out, you know, people had been abused. All of this was this mix of people. So I kind of fitted where no one is meant to fit, really.
Amazing. Was it a kind of competitive process? Were you aware of, you said the top student didn't get picked. Were you aware of the other people that you were competing against in that environment?
Do you know, most of the time I'm competing with myself. And I think I have a clear recognition of that now. but not really then. At that time, it was very much me pitted against. In actual fact, the teachers didn't know I applied for this university.
Wow.
They didn't know I was going. But I was very much pitting myself against the top student because I knew that they were going in. And it was competitive, but because of the racism around, I was never in the game. I was never considered to be part of the competition. I was always overlooked.
Amazing. Great story. If that was the kind of, or one of the seminal moments, the kind of tipping points that set you off on a path, as you reflect back on your whole career, is there anything that you think, oh, that one got away? Like I'd really have enjoyed the opportunity to go down that route and see where that would have taken.
So many. But again, I think it's down to me not putting myself out there because of the head trash that I've inherited about not being good enough. I don't deserve it and all of that. So there's probably a lot in my life that has got away. I can't think of one because there's probably been so many. And then on the other side, I really do believe that you're meant to be where you are at any moment in time. There is always going to be something where you think, well, I'm so glad I didn't take that opportunity. I'm so glad I didn't go because I wouldn't have had this.
Yeah.
So I think that the universe is so abundant. There isn't ever one right path. There is only the road less traveled, which is your path. And I think you need to not only create it, but you need to discover it as you go. So I tend not to be somebody that looks back with regret. I'm very much in present with it is what it is. Now, what are you going to do?
Absolutely. I love that. You're an award-winning strategist. You're recognised by LinkedIn Sales as one of the 15 innovating sales influencers to follow. You're the host of the Scale Your Sales podcast. You speak with audiences all over the world on customer growth. But what is your story? If I take you back before that interview at university, what did you want to do as a kid? Was art something that's there? How did you get into sales? Like, tell me that story.
I suppose my first sale, I used to, and I still do, not very often, make clothes. So I made clothes for my Barbie. And I made clothes for myself. And I remember going to all dayers. I grew up in Leicester, went to all dayers in Nottingham, and I'd always went on to Leicester Market, brought some cheap fabric, never wash it, the colour runs. But I used to make these amazing outfits, and so I had a different outfit for an all-dayer, go to an all-dayer, and people say, oh my gosh, can you make me one for the next one? And I used to get sales out of that by wearing these outfits.
Amazing.
And so I suppose that was the first sale. So I used to demonstrate, I used to wear my wares, and so I was kind of selling without selling by just, very much being myself.
So how old were you when you were doing that?
I was 14, 15 to about 18 or so. So that kind of started me. I did art in school. I, did home economics, all of those, sewing and everything, because my mother taught me how to sew. But I remember we had the careers advisor and went along, and he asked me what do I want to do? And something, I don't know why, I'm not particularly into animals. I said, I want to be a vet. And he said to me, you're not intelligent enough to be a vet. Why don't you become a nurse like your mother? That was her vocation. Or you work on a Littlewoods, if you remember that, department store that's now no longer. So I worked in the kitchens as a Saturday job. So why don't you become a cook? And I said, well, I don't want to be a nurse. But he still insisted in sending me to a 2-week work experience, which confirmed I do not want to be a nurse. And then I was kind of left with, well, what do I do now? So I suppose I went back and reflected onto what are the things that I enjoy doing, which is kind of the sewing, and then had to do a foundation, did a foundation course, which, kind of led me on to a different path. But the other pivotal point was, do you remember The Troubleshooter with Sir John Harvey Jones? And he used to be the chair of ICI.
Right.
And he'd go round to these businesses and he would troubleshoot the businesses and give them business advice and set them on a new path.
Yeah.
I was absolutely captivated with that program that was on. And I thought, I can do that. I would love to do that. I would love to help businesses to grow. And he was coming from ICI, he was very much a man of the people and really cared about the founders and the generational businesses that he went into and really wanted them to help to prosper and grow. And that very much resonated with me.
Mm. It sounds like you were quite entrepreneurial, because there are a lot of people that have artistic talent and artistic flair, but they're not quite often with artists. They're not very good at selling their stuff, so they create stuff, but they don't want to necessarily advertise it and take money for it. But it sounds like from a pretty early age you were up for that kind of transactional relationship with a customer. Is there a kind of thread of entrepreneurialism in your family? Like, where does that come from?
It's interesting because my siblings, we've talked about this. My mother's a nurse.
Yeah.
She always wanted to train as a nurse. My father was a carpenter in Antigua, and then when he came here, couldn't get a job, so he worked in Dunlop. So, no entrepreneurial aspects within my family history, but all of my siblings are self-employed.
Interesting.
All of my siblings are self-employed. So there's something that happened between my parents' experience and our experience, and it kind of goes back to school again, being written off, not feeling that you're going to get the same opportunities. So you've got to then create the opportunities for yourself. So I think that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is, and I think this is very entrepreneurial, I don't like people telling me what to do. Yeah, I don't. I always think, I create systems. That's part of my DNA. I love to find not necessarily the shortcuts, but a better way of doing things. So I can have a blank sheet of paper. You can tell me what the outcome is, and I can create the process to, the most efficient process to get there. So, I'd often go into companies and think there's a better way of doing this. It's just common sense to me to do it this way, not that way. That would be better for the customer and so forth. So I'd often work in environments where I think I could do it better. The arrogance of it.
Or the imagination of it as well.
The imagination of it. Yeah. So I think that's part of it as well. So it's kind of creating your own destiny, because no one's going to, give you the opportunities. But it's part of my character as well. There's a better way of doing that. So, let's go out and do it. And yes, I am interested in commerce and in business. I love that aspect. And so when we're talking about art, I made sure I picked a degree that was very focused on business. I remember when I was going through Brighton, the course, and many people wanted to work at Marks and Spencer's and be a buyer. And I couldn't think of anything worse than that, really. That was really the pinnacle of and for me, it just was a complete and utter turn off. I wanted to do something that was very, very much more adventurous. I didn't really want a regular job and to be able to answer to other people. So it was a combination of all of those things.
And when did you discover that you could do the process piece? Because I think that's quite unusual to have the kind of creative element and to be able to see how things fit together in the system. I would say I have the creative side, but struggle more with, with that structure piece. So where did that light bulb turn on?
Do you know what? It's probably from sewing. I don't necessarily use patterns, but also, if you do use patterns, it's putting pieces together, and it's like a jigsaw, working out all of the pieces and how they fit together and mold. And there's got to be the process, there's got to be something that happens first before you can do the next thing and the next thing. So it's probably the practice of constructing an outfit and designing it and then putting it together and coming, to the end. And I did that so much in my childhood that it just became part of my DNA, putting, this jigsaw of things together to create an outfit.
Fascinating. Literally kind of wires your brain, presumably, by doing that. So you go to art school. And then what? What's your first step into the real world, as it were? First step into the world of work.
So my parents had divorced, and my father ended up in New York and Baltimore in America. And we had a placement year during our degree, and I went off to work for Laura Ashley in Wales, in Carno, which is an incredible experience. It was wonderful. They didn't have trains on a Sunday. The only entertainment was down the pub. But it was just beautiful. It was lovely just to be able to retreat to that. And I was a colorist. And literally I got a outline of the design and I had to color it in. That was my job.
Wow.
So that created my sense of color. And anyone that knows me, I always wear color, and I naturally know how to balance color and how to be adventurous, because I spent 6 months coloring in. And that really honed my sense of color, and it was a great cultural experience as well. But I wanted to go over the pond and experience America, because my dad was out there. And at the time, there was no opportunity, so I created it for myself. And literally, I took my portfolio, went out to America and got myself a job for 6 months. And then that created a pipeline to everyone else being able to go out to America, because I kind of built up all of the contacts. Mm-hmm. But when I finished my degree, I went back out to America and started selling sample designs. So I literally would go to the reference library, research all the companies, ring them up, English accent, people wanting to talk to me. And then I'd sell the designs. And what was great was that I remember meeting this gorgeous Black woman who was the CEO of a company that I went to see. And it blew my mind. I remember I did some work. I went to Sanderson and Liberties and sold these designs in the UK as well. And when I walked in, the mouth would drop, because it's like they weren't expecting a Black woman to walk through the door. Mm-hmm. I was that person, mouth drop, mic drop moment when I was in America, because I have never seen a Black woman CEO running a company looking amazing. Mm-hmm. Never seen that in my entire life. At that time in England, it was rare to see a bank teller being Black. It was so rare. So there was no role models for me at all. So there I was doing my thing, but I actually didn't have any role models to know that it's possible. And I went out to America and I discovered it's possible. So I came back with a completely different attitude, hence going to Sanderson and Liberty. I can do that. Yeah. And, actually really loving the mouth drop moment, because I could capitalize on that. I could, blind them with my knowledge and experience and what I knew. And I became their best, their only best Black friend that they took around places, which was similar to the experience in America. And because of my English accent, people would say, well, this design is not for me, but I've got a friend that would love to see you. Wait a moment. They would ring their friend working for a competing company. They would walk me downstairs, put me in the cab, tell the cab driver where to take me, and then I would rush into the next place and make a sale. So early experience in my life. And sometimes I do think I need to tap back into that, the art of it is possible. Because when you're working away, you're in your box, and all of the kind of the head trash starts coming back in again. It's realizing that, it is all possible. The universe will provide, and you just need to go out and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt, but before we continue with the episode, I've got a favour to ask. I'm on a mission to get this podcast in the hands of as many people as possible. So if you found what you've heard so far valuable, please, please, please like, comment, rate and subscribe. These things make a huge difference to our reach. And if you're open to it, if you happen to know just one person, someone who, just like you, would benefit from listening to these conversations, then please share the podcast with them. Let's get on with it. So, did you have a kind of sales process back then, or were you just instinctively connecting with people? Because that's one of the things that I really love about you is your ability to connect. Like it feels like we've known each other forever, and we're just having a catch up over coffee, and you put people at ease very quickly. Is that something that you were conscious of doing, or was that a natural process?
I'm more conscious of it now, but it was a natural process. The reason is, going back to my experience as a child growing up, is that a lot of people were. Here I am. Can you imagine? People were fearful, reticent of me, a young Black person, because there's a lot in the media, and they have certain perceptions. And so in order to get what I wanted, I suppose part of my role was to create that ease, and really break it down for other people so that they're comfortable. Otherwise I'm not going to be able to get what I want to get. So I had to go, the extra mile to make it easy for other people. So I think I just developed that, and a lot of people do. It's like this unspoken language. But I wasn't really conscious of it. It's just something that, many minority groups have to do. You have to do.
It's one of those things that, whilst you shouldn't have to do it. Let's draw that line in the sand right now. And it's also a brilliant asset to be able to do it. And there are plenty of the people in the world that don't have that skill set. But when you can engage with someone on a human level, especially in a sales context, when they feel enough warmth to you that they want to pick up the phone to their competitor and sit and put you in a cab and send you halfway across the city, you know that you've created a human connection. And so I'm kind of interested from your perspective about the intersection of humanity and process, because you're a process person, you help people with that strategy, but ultimately it's human beings that have to go and execute that.
Yeah, and I think it is a good 50-50. You're either more in one camp than the other, and I think it's actually discovering where you are for yourself and kind of starting to hone those skills. And it is an intersection. Some people are more kind of introverted, and on social media often will tell you what kind of person they are. They don't want to talk about themselves, or they're reserved on social media. And others are just out there, they'll tell you everything. And then that's uncomfortable for the more reserved people. So I think everyone is going to find their right level that they're comfortable with, and then develop from there. So I think there isn't a graph or anything. I just think you need to just do it.
Yeah.
You need to just put yourself out there and feel how it feels for you. Is that comfortable? Can I move a bit further? But I think on the other side, it's actually understanding that whether we're talking about sales, whether we're talking about building relationships, which is exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
people want to know you. So it's up to you as to how much you want to give them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of, I'm curious about people. I'm interested in people. I'm also introverted as well, that people don't always pick up on, because, with speaking and acting, you're
Yeah.
I'm out there. But actually, I probably after this will need to go and sit in a
have a lie
dark
down.
corner and face a
Yeah.
room.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. And I think, but
So you can adapt.
Yeah.
You can use the skills to adapt.
Absolutely. And I think it's that flexibility that is so important. I'm assuming, because you've had a very like colorful career. You've worked in the construction industry, you've worked abroad, you've run your own restaurant, like that. You've put yourself out there in lots of different situations, and presumably that teaches you how to be flexible and how to adapt.
Yeah, I think it does. But I think it's about understanding that everything you've done in the past is going to take you to everything you're going to do in the future. It's like a stepping stone. So you draw on. When I was working for the construction company, I implemented an accounting system. I knew nothing about accounts, but I knew they were losing money because on spreadsheets it doesn't work. Then I used that accounting system in the restaurant and bar. And now I can talk to other people about the importance of accounting and all of that. And I understand accounts so much more. If I've done bookkeeping from a educational point of view, but it's only when it becomes you're doing it, when it becomes reality. So all of the skills that you've built up, all the experiences that you have in the past enable you to do what you're doing now, and what you're doing now enable you to do what you're doing in the future. Now, your experience, my experience is going to be completely different. So what we do in the present is going to be completely different. And what we do in the future is going to be completely different. That's why you're only ever competing with yourself, because no one else in the world has your DNA of experience, of life experiences. They can pick up your skills. We can all do the same learning, but what changes that is the experiences that we've had that you use to filter your learning going forward. So you're only ever competing with yourself. And so I've done a variety of things, but actually what I've done in terms of the skills and leveraging the experiences isn't really that different. The wrapping may have changed, but actually it isn't really different, because I'm not different.
Yeah.
I'm using the same lenses, I'm using my history of experience, and I'm adapting what I'm doing. It's just the wrapper that's changing.
Brilliant. You did an MBA at Cranfield, and then you have been back as a visiting fellow at Cranfield. So that is really interesting to kind of go full circle in that environment. What was the process like of returning to share knowledge in an institution where you had gained knowledge?
It was a great honour. I mean, it really is, because Cranfield was one of those pivotal moments in my life, in that when I joined, you think, oh, I'm not going to, there's all these people that have got, went to Oxford, and, they're a senior manager of a corporate. Who am I? And what I realized, because of my entrepreneurial experience, they may have been an accountant. They know accounting, but they don't know anything about marketing, sales, and customer relationships and all of that. Whereas I knew more or less all of those aspects. And going back was actually just sharing the experience. They do so much on personal development, unlike on other MBAs. And I think it's really good what Cranfield does to invite others to come back, because you can see that you can share the post experience of Cranfield, but also we've gone on to develop more skills that we're able to, more life skills, more experience in industry that we can share back. So it's a great honour. I'm so glad that I chose Cranfield over other universities.
Did you have any nervousness about going back into the room? The reason I ask is that I went back and taught for quite a while at a drama centre where I trained as an actor. And I distinctly remember walking back in that first day and thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm going to get found out. Why am I here? I should be on the other side.
I think I'm going to get found out all the time. It's not going to Cranfield that does that. No, because I was still learning as much as I'm giving. Yeah. And I think I always do that. I learn as much. That's my curiosity. I learn as much as I give all the time. So it's a give and take. So I didn't feel nervous. And there were some people that I really wanted to see.
Yeah.
Some professors that I, just changed my life and I really wanted to see. So, no, I there wasn't any reticence there at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could say the same for my experience. Your kind of focus these days is on customer excellence. So could you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, when I worked I worked in sales in the 1990s. Financial services sales, and it's very much focused on, we're selling to you. We have the knowledge, we're selling to you, and that was the traditional training. Then I went and I worked in customer experience. This is like someone that referred me in and all of that knew my skill set. And so I worked with What If in customer experience, and the light bulb moment came on, and I realized, oh my gosh, this 10 years working in sales, we've got it all wrong. It's not about sales, it's all about the buyers. The buyers are your best innovators and creators. Doing customer experience journeys, I realized, oh my gosh, how much customers really knew. We were ignoring them before. So it changed my perspective, 180 degrees of what sales should be. And that's what I've stuck with going forward and really kind of developed that. So it's not about the sales experience, it's about the buying experience. It's not about the sales process, it's about the buying process. And even yesterday, I was reading on LinkedIn, someone asking why, when, pitching and lead generation, people are always talking about themselves rather than talking about the people they're talking to, their buyers and their customers. Why is this still happening was the question. And especially AI, but it's laziness. It's not doing the research on the customer. So that's really what I do. Scale your sales. There's a framework, there's a foundation to it, which is let's get the sales team right, have the right people in the right seats. But then the next stage, because I was finding when I was doing all this customer buyer experience in sales, but actually a lot of the sales team shouldn't really be in sales. So I thought, okay, I need to deal with that bit first. So, the buyer experience is really, really getting sellers to understand the journey that their buyers go on, the problems their buyers have, how their buyers need to sell internally when you're not there. So what information do you need to give them? What do you need to understand about the experiences they need to go into, the challenges they have? It's not about you. And if you are able to overcome them, there's very little around the actual product knowledge, the product benefits. The bulk of it is the management of the deal, which is all of those blocks that buyer or the group of the decision-making unit need to go through, all of the hurdles, internal hurdles they need to go through in order to get to the stage where they consider the benefits of your product. Now, what you're doing is you're talking 100% of the benefits of the product, how great I am, and actually completely ignoring the good 80% of problems the buyers have that you need to help them overcome.
And how do we get better at understanding? You're using the word buyers. I would use the word audience. How do we get better at understanding the other people that we're interacting with? Because I think I've used this analogy before, but when I remember directing a theatre show, and it was a production of Hamlet, and it was a very different production of Hamlet to a production of Hamlet was in the West End. The words are exactly the same, but it was for a completely different audience. And if we'd have tried to imitate them, we'd have failed miserably because our audience would have hated it. So we had to be really mindful of who we were pitching to, essentially. In a sales context, how do we get better at understanding the people that are in front of us, or the people that we want to be in front of?
Well, I think the first thing is don't talk at them, talk with them.
Yeah.
Ask them questions. There's the OMG has done some research, and one of the aspects of sales that's really critical is listening over talking. Mm-hmm. And if you're able to measure this and recruit for it, it has the research shows that it's 375% larger difference compared to other insights in creating the best sellers.
Wow.
So 10% of the top sellers have this aspect of listening over talking, and it makes a massive difference. So if you're curious, if you listen and ask great open strategic questions. And often what salespeople do is they ask questions to lead buyers down a particular path that the seller wants the buyer to go on.
Yeah.
And that's completely ignoring this whole 80% of the environment that the buyer is sitting in. But actually, if you're sitting down and having a cup of coffee with a friend, you'd find out, how are they? Where's their headspace? What's going on in their lives? Well, why would it be any different if you're sitting down and you're talking to your audience? You would find out where the headspace is, what's the mindset, what are their challenges and all that. And it's exactly the same. You've got to treat your audience as your friend before they become your friend. So that's on social media. That's in any aspect of your life. And this is what you were talking about earlier. It seems like people I meet, it's like I met them years ago. It's like I already know them because I treat people like they're already my friend.
Yeah.
I treat them like I've known them for a long time. I remember somebody, an executive coach, he works with loads of CEOs and get paid tons of money. And I sat down with them over lunch and I was asking some questions. He said, "Oh my gosh, no one's ever asked me that before." And we had this great conversation. And it's the art of really listening. And that's not just with your ears, it's with your eyes and the whole body language of what's going on. You can feel people's discomfort before they've said a word.
Yeah.
So, how can you investigate that isn't challenging? And it's really about constructing those open strategic questions that's not about where you want to take people, but it's about opening up where people want to go.
How do you suggest people then shift gear? Because obviously, we can have a brilliantly open and insightful conversation for 45 minutes and we can walk away as friends, but we've never actually talked about the business or the opportunity that's there. So there's a real art in being able to elegantly and congruently and humanly shift the conversation round to a sales conversation. Have you got any tips for that?
Yeah. So you've had a great conversation and you're about to walk away. And I would just say, I've really loved this conversation. I didn't expect that we'd be talking, so much about my background and everything. I've said things to you that I haven't said to anyone. Where would you like to go next? What would you like to do next? Put the shoe on their foot.
Nice.
Because they may think, I'd really love to have this conversation again. I'd like to take it to another level. It's all about them. Where would you like to go next? What would you like to do next? And they're going to tell you. They say, do you know what? I didn't ask you anything about what you do. Fantastic. That's what you want. They're going to say something like that. We just didn't get to that yet. Let's book another meeting. Do you think they're going to turn up for that next meeting? Yes. Are they invested? Yes, they are. Do they want to hear about what you do? Yes, they do. Do not turn up and talk all about you now. Yeah. Do not do that. You've killed it, right? But that's exactly what you want to come out of the conversation.
Yeah. That's genius.
Where do you want to go next with this? What would you like to do? It's all about them.
Yeah, love that question. That's fabulous. So in terms of the scale methodology, this first part is really about, understanding the buyer journey and understanding the team that are involved in making the sale. What are the other steps that people should be thinking about and looking out for?
Well, every company is so uniquely different in terms of the challenges that they have. And it may be, as you say, the starting point will be, let's make sure we've got the right salespeople in the right seats and do all of that analysis and the survey them. Let's make sure that we're hiring the right people that are going to fit into your culture and they're going to stay and not make those mistakes. Once you've got all of that out of the way, okay, well, let's look at your processes and your system. How customer centric are they? When was the last time you talked to your top customers? Do you know who your top customers are? I mean, if we look at generally, there's 20% of your top customers that create about 80% of your sales revenue. Often I meet organizations that have not done the analysis to understand who they are. And then out of that top 20%, 5% of those will be your top 20%, 5 years plus, future customers. So have we identified who are those and the potential? Now, if we have that knowledge, and that's what I get companies to do, then we can look at, okay, well, what is the character? Let's delve in deeper to our 20% and particularly our 5%, our future business. Let's understand more about where they are now, but more importantly, where they're going. Where they're going, is that aligned to where we want to go? Can we delve into that a lot deeper? Can we start to develop the kind of resources so that we're more closely aligned? Can we start to have those strategic top level conversations so that you almost have a thought leadership conversation about where both of your organizations want to go before you go there? So you're not developing products and services yet, but you're talking about, so few companies get the opportunity to intelligently talk about the possible of the future. Can you imagine if you were to invite them to dinner and you were to facilitate that type of conversation with them? They think, oh yeah, I've never had those conversations. I really need to. I want to talk to the board more about. I think these are really great ideas. Can we investigate this? Let's talk again in 6 months.
Yeah.
And then the next stage, let's talk again in 6 months. Is it possible for you to develop that? And you already know that it is, because that's where you want to go as well. So I often talk to organizations about how to develop their future line of business going forward. So it's retaining those key customers that you know are going to be the future of your business and having those conversations. Now, it may be a 3-year plan. It's likely to be that, maybe a 5-year plan. But the problem is that companies are so short-sighted because they don't know where to hedge their bets. Yeah. Well, if you're hedging your bets on your existing customers and you're able to develop and align yourself with them, you know that they're going to be a greater part of your future business.
It's fascinating as I listen to you talk about that. I can map it straight across to actually take it out of a sales context and just into a network context. So the 20% of the people that you spend time with that make the biggest impact in your life, that are your biggest advocates, and are you putting your time and energy into building those relationships, and are you having strategic conversations with them about what's next, whether that is you looking for a sale or whether that's you thinking, if you work within an organization, thinking about your next job or the next company that you might want to be in. And I think it's so easy in a world that is so noisy and so busy not to be strategic like that. You just go, I haven't got time to think about this. I'm just going to reply to a message on Facebook, and we lose that kind of big picture piece of thinking, which is so important. When you think about that scale methodology and you think about the kind of data and the analysis that sits behind that, for those people maybe a little bit like me that go, oh God, when you show me a spreadsheet I get a little bit nervous, is there any way that you can kind of simplify the understanding, like what are the metrics that we should be looking for?
So what, as in finding that the 20% of the customers,
20% of the customers, or 20% of the
your
network,
your network, right? Yeah. Well, it's looking at the characteristics of past performance. So who have been the people that have referred most to you? Who are the people that are constantly in your network, or maybe on social media, that are commenting, that are following you, that are really kind of bigging you up? You need to identify who are the people that absolutely love what you do. Love you and love what you
and
do.
In a sales context, that's the same, isn't it? It's like who are our customers that are great to work with? They come time and time again. They're always saying, this is amazing, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And then the first thing that I would do is, so you isolate this group of people. And the first thing that I would do, because we don't do this enough, is I would thank them. Put a testimonial up for them and tell them what you've done for me, and I'd like to thank you for that. So they don't expect it, but just mark a line in the sand. This is my group of people. I'm going to thank them. Maybe send something digital, real, a card, a handwritten, something, right? So now we've got this group of people and you've thanked them. That's the first thing that I would do. Then I would try and book a conversation, have a conversation with them. And don't have a conversation that's going to take you somewhere. You don't know where it's going to, just get some time. And, it's nice to do these things if you can face to face. But, we're in a global economy. That isn't always possible. But mark some time in the calendar to just see where the conversation goes. But, obviously for them, you've thanked them. You've said how much they've meant to them, how pivotal they've been. That's for them is going to be the starting point. What I often say to people is you need to give before you ask anything. So this is not an asking conversation. This is, just discovery and talking about what you've been thinking about, where they're at and all. So develop the relationship a little bit further. And out of that may come some ideas of what more you can do, because you've thanked them for what they've already done. And there may be some ideas of what more you can do. So anyway, now you've got this group of people and you've had a conversation with them, and maybe you're going to refine it a little bit. They're going in a different direction to where you want to go. Then what I would do is every 6 months, you need to tap into that group of people and continue to nurture the relationship with no ulterior motive at all in mind. But they're already in your business network. They're already there. So there's likely to be results, if it's business, that comes out of that because they're in your business network. But do not start with the aim that you're going to get something out of them. That may never happen again. But the fact is, when you build relationships, they're more likely to refer you into other like-minded people. The problem is that we don't designate enough time to relationship building. I use my diary for everything. I was said to you how my diary completely went offline. It was like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself. It was a nightmare. But literally, I will put in, sent something on LinkedIn. They said, it's not right now. Let's do something end of the year. Straight in my diary at the end of the year. I don't have the memory I used to. So all of that is follow up, but it's all in my diary. Tells me this is the time to actually follow up. So you've got to be consistent about what you say you're going to do. You absolutely do it.
Brilliant. That's such amazing advice. Janice, what the other thing that I wanted to ask you about was the podcast, because you've recorded at the point of this recording 240 episodes, which is kind of huge, talking about scaling your sales. What are some of the biggest learnings that you've taken from the guests that you've interviewed?
Oh, it's I really like to like you, I really like to understand something about the guests. What's their perspective in life, Dominic? And so it's not all sales. And there's going to be a particular perspective that they have on sales. And I like to try and pull that out. There's so many things that I've learned. And as much as the podcast can be a big investment of time and energy, I almost can't not do it, because I learn as much as I give from the podcast. And so it's a real learning tool. And I always feel so buzzed after coming off a day of recording, and feel so privileged and lucky that I've had access to incredible people. It just makes me feel all's right with the world when I have these conversations. I really just do feel like so lucky and privileged that I've had these conversations. So it does as much for me as I hope it does for the audience.
Absolutely. Well, I can completely relate to that, especially in this conversation right now. I could continue chatting away forever, but I'm going to bring things to a close. So a final question for you. If you could go back to your village and give that little girl being given that terrible careers advice by her careers advice advisor a piece of advice, what would you tell her?
Am I allowed to swear? Do you know, I didn't, because I was introverted, more introverted then than now. I really didn't have, the balls to say what I would say now, really. But also, I still carry that head trash. And I feel very passionately about the role of influencers and teachers. And I suppose I've carried forward is that whenever someone comes up to me and wants my advice, I give the most positive. People don't often see their own genius. And, one of my abilities is to see the genius in other people. I may not always see it in myself. That's why I have a mastermind group, but I certainly can see it in other people. So to help others to identify their genius and to give them permission to go out and do it. And I think that experience and the head trash that I continue to carry, I make sure that I help others to go forward with courage to do what they're here to do. I really believe that we're all here. That's why we're unique in our DNA and our experience. We're all here for a reason. And if I could encourage anybody and everybody to go out and do what you're here to do, because no one else, whether it's your parents, whether it's your teachers, they're talking from their experience. They have no idea of the future. I have no idea of your experience. How dare they think that they can tell you who you are and what you can do? It's completely rubbish. Only you can do that. And even you don't know that. So just go out and do it. Just go out and do it.
Amazing advice. Janice, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Why Life's a Pitch podcast. If you'd like to improve the way you pitch and communicate, I'm giving away a special gift to all my listeners. We've developed the Pitching with Impact scorecard to help you benchmark your pitch performance in 6 key areas. It'll take you less than 5 minutes to complete, and you'll receive a detailed, personalised report packed full of insights and ideas to help you improve and grow. Just head over to dominiccolenso.com/scorecard to get started.